Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing, and today we've got another very interesting combination out here to try. It's one that several of you guys have wanted to see, and I'm definitely curious to see what it can do as well, since I think it's going to give us some very devastating results. But for the shells I've got today, I brought out some more of these, the Federal copper plated buckshot loads. However, these are the 12 gauge 3.5 inch 18 pellet double aught loads at about 1100 feet per second. The copper plated lineup in general is usually always a pretty safe bet to be a good performer, but these 3.5 inch 18 pellet double aught shells have been completely devastating in our testing. They've patterned well through everything we've put them through, and I don't think today's shotgun and choke combo is going to be any exception to that. So I expect to see some very nice results. And for the shotgun we're putting them through, I brought out the Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag. This one's got a 28 inch barrel on it. And for the choke, we've got the Patternmaster Black Mamba. It's a 690 constriction, which is pretty interesting because if you don't know, the 835s are overboard. The inside bore diameter matches that of a 10 gauge. So having a 690 up here, although it is in the full to extra full choke range for a regular 12 gauge bore, in an 835, it's like having a turkey choke up there, because 690 is very typical turkey choke constriction for an 835. I like to kind of give the equivalent of us throwing a 675 in a normal 12 gauge bore. That's about what we're looking at here for constriction relative to bore diameter. But these Black Mambas are Patternmaster's kind of do-all choke. You can shoot steel waterfowl stuff, you can shoot buckshot, you can shoot turkey loads, and it usually does well with just about all of them. We've seen good results with this one from buckshot before, so is it going to be a little too much constriction for 18 pellets a double aught? Maybe, but I still think it's going to give us a very nice pattern. But I am curious to see what the edges do and if we start throwing flyers or not due to that constriction. So we'll see what happens, but in theory, it should be a pretty good combination if that constriction works out for us. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards, the chrono so we can get our velocity, and the templates that we can lay up over our results. So let's get you guys a view of that target. We'll take our shot and we'll see just how good these 3.5 inch copper plated double aught loads can do through this Black Mamba 690. Alright, that shell gave us 1241 through the chrono. The boss claim is only 1100, but I don't think this is too unusual for what we have been seeing from these. I think it's usually about 1200 or so. So from that 835, with a 28 inch barrel and a little bit of choke out of the end, we're seeing above box claim by quite a bit there. So plenty enough velocity if they were able to hold a pattern. So let's go check that out and see how it performed. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and we definitely see some pretty interesting results. We've got all 18 of them on the paper. The white dot was the point of aim, so we did favor a touch low overall, but that was probably more so just either me or this particular shell and choke combo favoring a hair low. But we see a pretty interesting looking pattern here. We've got a pretty hot core of them that kind of drew a vertical line right there below that white dot. So a lot of pellets of double aught right there in our core area, that's for sure. But outside of that, we definitely started to string some pellets out around the edges, a little bit of all over the place on that, and that's not something we typically see from these shells. Now, is this a bad pattern? No, absolutely not. That is still going to be devastating at 40 yards, but is it the best pattern we've seen from these shells? Also, no. We've seen way better, way tighter, way nastier from them as well, through other chokes that are a little bit less constriction. So I think that 690 with 18 pellets of double aught is starting to get a little bit too much choke right there at the end of the barrel, at least through an 835, because those little scattered pieces around the edge tell me I think we're starting to blow the pattern open just a little bit. I did measure the farthest 2 points across are left to right at 27 inches, but we had 24 inches from that top pellet down to that bottom left pellet kind of vertically there. So 27 inches from the farthest 2 points across. Not anything impressive by the numbers, but still we kept a good core. And one more thing I'm noticing here before we throw our templates up, if we look at that core area where that line of pellets is and follow it to the left, we kind of had a little bit of a swirl going on here coming up to the top. Kind of looks like an upside down comma or something of that nature. I'm curious because that Black Mamba has what they call the coil zone technology in it. It's a spiral cut inside of the choke, and I'll put some pictures up on the screen if I can get them, but it's supposed to allow the gases to escape and actually use some gas to help constrict your actual shot column down. And it almost kind of looks like that might have grabbed a couple pellets and and started to make them act like they were shot through a rifled choke or a rifled barrel because of that spin that we saw there. Could be completely random, but I don't know. I just saw it and figured I'd point it out, and if anybody else saw it as well and was curious about it, it's a possibility anyway. But let's throw a few templates up, which will give us a better reference than a blank sheet of paper. So first up here, we have a 10-inch circle, and we have a definite 8 pellets within there. And there's one that's kind of right on the edge of the template on the left. I believe it kind of made it in there, so 9 pellets, I guess you would call it. That is exactly half of the shell within a 10-inch circle at 40 yards. That's going to be devastating, no doubt about it. Absolutely going to do the job. I mean, if you had a standard 9-pellet double-aught load and you had all of them within a basketball size spread at 40, then it would be pretty impressive, that's for sure. So for a core, looking fine here, but let's throw the deer template up and see what it would look like on a hunt. So here's that deer template, and I did favor it a touch lower compared to where our point of aim was because the pattern was legitimately a touch low. So I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt a little bit anyway, and you can clearly see that would be devastating on a deer hunt, no doubt about it. You've got a bunch of them right through the heart and lungs area, and the couple flyers around the edges. We had one back there hit a little farther back than you would like, and there's 1 or 2 just in front of the deer behind the template as well. So is that good enough to 40 yards for a deer hunt? Yep, it absolutely is. And with how hot that core is, you could definitely push it out a little bit farther than that. 45 or 50 yards is not out of the question. You would probably start to run out of energy and penetration capability before that core would actually open up far enough for you to not reliably get into some vitals on the deer. So not bad overall, absolutely good enough for deer hunting. So we'll throw the hog template up just to take a look at it. I think it's going to be the same story, but I've got it, so we might as well take a glance. And here's that hog template. Just like I suspected, it's pretty well the same story. Plenty good enough for that scenario as well. If you want to hunt with a 3.5-inch double-aught for hogs, that's a combo that's going to get the job done all day long. And I guess for those curious, or for those of you that would do it, or maybe would be put in a situation where you're deer hunting and have a chance, a coyote would be a little bit smaller than that hog template. And obviously, if you throw a handful of double-aught pellets through them, even all the way out to 40 yards, it's going to be devastating. So it would certainly do the job for those guys as well. Overall, I would say it did decently. That's clearly a solid pattern. You've got a really hot core to it. I think it's just a little bit too much right there at the end for 18 pellets of double-aught at over 1200. Still a plenty usable enough pattern, but I think that's why we were seeing much better results from our stock full choke, and I believe we tested these through a 710 extra full as well in that gun, and they all did much better than this, even though this is still not bad at all. So for a copper plated buffered load with a wad, I definitely think it helped it hold together a little better than a very cheap basic load of buckshot through that same combo. So not bad overall. Maybe I was hoping for a touch better out of them, but still, that would absolutely do the job for whatever you would want to use it for. And here's the wad from that shell. Very typical Federal stuff, although this does look like the same wad they use in the 3-inch loads, so it is not full length for a 3.5-inch shell. There's definitely at least 2 rows of pellets sitting above this wad when they're in that shell. Those could very well be the flyers around the edges that we saw, but there's no major damage or anything to it. There's this little tag of plastic off the bottom, but we've seen that a number of times. Overall, everything else looks very much normal. There's not really any major signs of overconstruction with the wad itself, but I think the pattern shows that we're probably just starting to hit that limit where we're going to start going backwards with our pattern performance. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? At this point, I think we've pretty well covered it. It would absolutely be good enough for anything you'd want to use it for. Deer, pigs, coyotes, or anything else. It's most certainly gonna work, that's for sure. Is it the best pattern we've seen from these shells? No, but that doesn't mean it's a bad pattern, because it's definitely not at all. I just think we've started to hit the constriction limit with 690 for that particular loading from that 835. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see, or were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these 3.5-inch copper plated loads? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? Is this a combo you would use use if you're getting a pattern like that? Or are the 3.5-inch shells just way more shell than what you typically like to run? Too much recoil, too much cost, or whatever the case would be? And maybe what other combos do you want to see tested with either those copper-plated 3.5-inch loads or that 835 with the Black Mamba choke? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.